Hey everyone, welcome to the main event. This is Joe Tillman, live from Vancouver, British Columbia. It is I don't want to say the inaugural broadcast, but it is a return of the show after a long hiatus. Last broadcast I did, I think, was in April with Dr. Manny Mittal out of London, UK. And it's good to be back. Had a lot of things going on in the background with Hair Transplant Mentor and some other things that I'm working on that you guys will be learning about soon. But I hope everyone's been good, and thank you for your patience with the last couple of days. I was supposed to get Dr. Jerry Cooley on, but had some serious technical difficulties, and that just did not work out. We will be having him on maybe next week. We'll see how that works out. I also have Dr. Sean Bainham coming up next week as well. He's committed, and we're going to figure out which day that's going to be. And I got other doctors coming on to talk and answer your questions as well. So with that said, I do have Dr. Aron Nusbaum. He's on hold. I'm going to switch him on over here right now and welcome him to the main event again. Dr. Nusbaum, welcome. How are you?
Doing great, Joe. Always a pleasure. Nice to be back.
Audio.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what happened to it. No, hold on. Did you do something when you were changing your coat?
I touched nothing.
Hang on.
Hello.
There we go. Got it. Okay.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, Joe. I'm great.
Hi,
nice
Doc.
to be back. Glad the audio's working.
Yeah. That's
I know the first time we did this, we had a little bit of audio difficulties as well. So hopefully everybody can hear us loud and clear today, and it's nice to be back on the show.
Video is easy. Audio is tough because there's so many different routings that have to go on behind the scenes. So well said. And in the meantime, anyone that's watching in the chat room, Ken Kramer, thanks for joining us, and hello back to you. Can you just confirm that the sound is good on your end coming through on YouTube? It'd be really good to see that. He says it sounds good. Okay. Looks like we got a winner. Right on. So, Dr. Nusbaum, what's new with the practice? What's going on with Miami Hair? Love to hear.
Everything is going great.
Yeah. The main question I want to know, and I think some of the viewers would like to know, is what's the latest with your use of Artis? Are you still using Artis? And if so, how often?
Yes. So very good question that I get asked on probably a daily 3 to 4 time a day basis. So good thing I'm prepared to answer that.
Yeah.
So I am still using the robot in selected patients. So as you guys may or may not know, I'm one of the few doctors that still has this machine in their office and is still using them.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have all seen my results, and I think that probably one of the few doctors that able to use the machine in a spectacular way and still provide beautiful, beautiful results without over harvesting donors and all those things.
Yeah.
So what we have found, we have been using the robot since 2011, 2012. They have told me that I've done more cases with it than anybody in the world.
Wow.
So what I have been able to determine in all those years of experience, I've been able to better select patients that I think will do well with the robot, as opposed to those where they may be better off doing a manual FUE procedure.
Right.
So I have found that in particular, there's sort of 3 or 4 types of patients or or issues or characteristics which would lead me away from the robot. Those are, in particular, people with very fine caliber hair,
Okay.
very limited donor areas where a lot of the extractions have to be done a little bit lower in the nape, maybe below the occipital prominence. I found that that's not an area that the robot does very well in.
Right.
And lastly, most importantly, people with previous surgeries, especially linear strip scars. Usually the strip scar will be right in sort of that sweet spot. And as we know, the follicular architecture is a little bit distorted under the skin. And I have found that the robot is not working great in those senses. Now,
that's interesting. Yeah.
For the patients that we are doing robotic cases, they're typically virgin scalps, straight hair, good dense donor areas. But what I will share is that I am still doing a proportion of those patients with manual FUE in addition to the robot. So it's sort of this hybrid type of procedure. We are no longer using the robot by itself in any patient. So even if we do feel like you will get good results with the machine, we always blend the borders of the robotic extraction, which we know can sometimes be in a rectangular type of box. So we go around and do about 20% of the extractions manually to sort of blend and feather the edges and homogenize the borders. In addition, we are keeping very meticulous counts throughout the case. So I, grid by grid, know exactly what my transection rate is, exactly my ratios of multi-hair to single hairs to 2 hair grafts, etc. And at any point, if I'm not happy with it, we just turn the thing off and we do it by hand. Could make an argument, why not just do everybody by hand? I do feel like in the correct patient, and it all comes down to patient selection, I do feel like in our hands, the company has deleted the factory presets on the device. We're messing with parameters of the robot that not a lot of people even know how to use. I do feel like in the proper patient, it can be equal to manual FUE. But I always give patients the option and tell them, look, I believe, in my opinion, the robot will like your scalp. You will do great with it. However, if based on personal preference, you prefer to do this manually, I have absolutely no problem with that.
Fair enough. That sounds like a very well-rehearsed reply. But it also comes from actually knowing what you're talking about. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I knew that you were, well, I didn't know, but I suspected you were in the upper reaches of those who have done more cases than most using the robot, but I didn't know that you were numero uno. So that's impressive. That's good.
Yeah.
How many cases total have you done?
Probably at this point, going back to 2012, I mean, it's got to be close to, it's got to be over 5,000 cases.
Wow.
I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. About, 50%, in the older times, we used to be about 50% FUE, 50% strip. That number has definitely changed more recently, and we do approximately 500 cases a year.
Right. Okay.
Total. So
yeah, that's impressive. And so you certainly have the experience based on the numbers alone. That's spectacular.
Right.
So, and what's, and just so the audience knows, I'm asking because I haven't talked to Dr. Nussbaum in several months. And so I'm getting an update myself in real time about what's going on in his clinic when I ask these questions. These aren't prepared questions that he's been sent so he can get the answers for the show. How many strips are you doing percentage-wise compared to FUE now?
Probably about 35%.
Okay. It's still healthy then.
It used to be 50-50, but it's still right. So mostly, like everybody asks, why would anybody do a strip anymore? And I say, well, if they don't want to shave, it's still a great option. We use a trichophytic closure. I get beautiful scars. They're older gentlemen that wear longer hairstyles that just don't want to shave. They don't want to go through manual FUEs. No shave FUE, just because we're limited in numbers of grafts with what we can do with that.
Right.
So a lot of times we will still recommend strip. Also, younger patients who are trying to maximize their donor area, as I know you have spoken about vastly. We always tell patients, look, if you think you're going to have to do this 3 or 4 times, we can maximize your donor by starting with strip, exhausting the elasticity, and then you still have manual FUE as an option.
At least one good solid strip, sometimes 2 in some select cases. I'm a strong believer.
It's almost like a freebie. You can get 2,000, 2,500 grafts without really, messing up your potential FUE donor for later.
100%. Yeah. And it's an interesting debate that still goes on to this day. And what I've noticed, I find this very interesting, is there's a lot of new doctors that have come on the scene in the past 5 years, and almost all of them will will be negative about the approach of even a hybrid approach. You do have the odd doctor that's come on the scene in the past 5 years or so that is utilizing strip to their benefit, and they are utilizing hybrid procedures where they're doing strip and FUE on the same
Right.
patient on the same day or over 2 or 3 days. But I've talked to a lot of doctors that have no experience with strip whatsoever, and I mean, you can't blame them, but they're repeating sound bites that they hear from their colleagues or someone that they may have learned from, things like this, and they haven't taken the time to understand the finer nuances of the benefits of strip, which are still vast in my opinion. There's a lot of the benefits are very beneficial compared to FUE for the bigger cases, such as myself. Like I've always said, my case where I was almost a Norwood 7 by the time I got to my first repair case, FUE would not get me anywhere near the coverage I have now after X number of strips. I did augment at the end with FUE, and this, obviously this, Doc, but this is for people watching that may not be aware. Having an augmented surgery with FUE after several strips was the best approach for me, and I would not have had the coverage that I have now had I not been able to go through the strip option first. Very important. And unfortunately, it is getting to be less and less of a specialty. Fewer people are performing it, but those that are still performing it or just now starting to perform it, I think they're getting a certain clientele, a certain patient that is seeking this procedure, because I'm also seeing that more people as patients are embracing it than they were maybe 5 years ago. Have you noticed that in your...
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. What I was just going to say is I think it's interesting how lately I'm getting not the overwhelming proportion, but I'm getting more young people who want to start with strip for the reasons that you and Spencer kind of preach. So, that's a good sign that you're having educated patients come in here and say, but I think I really want to start with an FUT. I heard we can get more donor with that way. And I'm like, wow, that's really refreshing to hear from a 26, 27, 28-year-old that you actually are trying to not just get FUE'd. It's great.
Yeah. You don't have to battle with them, like we do normally. Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like I've had a couple calls come through while we're talking. And I meant to remind everyone, we do have a phone line open. It's 1-888-491-0512 for North America. And if you're calling, if you're watching from the UK and Europe, you can call on the UK number. That's 044-20-812-67771. And we'd love to hear from you, assuming I can make the phones work. But
I was going to say one quick thing too about that. I've, probably of the, 1,000 women that I have done surgery on, 99% of them have been strip.
Yeah.
And every one of them comes in here saying they want FUE.
Of course.
And so that's just another big population that, it's probably 20% of our patients are women, and I'm pushing strip in every one of them as long as there's sufficient elasticity.
That's a great subject I want to get to in just a moment after we talk to the caller that's on the line right now. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Is it me?
Yes, it's you.
It's you.
Great. Hi. Yes, my name's Terry, and I'm calling from Los Angeles County.
Sorry, what was your name?
Hi, I just joined you guys kind of mid conversation about FUT.
Yeah.
I got an FUE procedure coming up now on 16 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of interesting observations. I never had any shock loss at all, which is surprising. I think I had 2,200 grafts or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it just grew in from day one, and it's been a great result. It was FUE.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
I had a strip procedure maybe 25 years ago, but that was just in the crown area.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to hear you guys talking about FUT and how that's kind of a lost art now, and that younger guys are coming in asking for it. Is it okay, by the way, if I mention the doctor who performed my procedure?
100%.
Oh, great. It's Dr. Benham over on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yep. I know him well.
Friendly guy, totally accessible, takes my calls. He's very concerned. He wants everybody to, have the best results possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's great, and I'm glad I went to see him. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. But why would you say that it's probably there's an advantage or a benefit to starting with FUT rather than just going straight to FUE?
Well, first off, I want to say great choice with Dr. Benham. I think he's one of the better doctors on the planet. That's why he, just like Dr. Nusbaum, is a member of hairtransplantmentor.com, which is my website. I've reviewed him thoroughly, just like I have Dr. Nusbaum. Very high standards that he meets. And great choice for you. And if you're in Los Angeles, it was a no-brainer since you're so close. But I'm going to let Dr. Nusbaum touch on the question by the caller there. Go ahead, Doc.
So when we're talking about number of follicles that can be extracted with FUE, we're really talking about sort of, how can I say this? Surface area, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how many grafts are available in that zone to take out? We know, and we've actually, myself and Dr. Paul Rose did some studies on this. We've looked at the max, if you're trying to harvest with FUE and you're trying to not take adjacent follicular units, the math comes out to be about 1 out of every 7. The next time you do it, it comes out to be about 1 out of every 4. So if you go ahead and if you start with FUE, let's just say your donor can take, conservatively, a 2,500 graft harvest and then another 1,500 graft harvest. That's 4,000 grafts that you can take. I don't believe that by starting with strip, you still can take those 4,000 grafts afterwards. So if somebody says they're going to have 3 procedures over their life, how can I get the most amount of grafts? It's usually to do strip till there's no more flexibility, and then you've still preserved all that surface area or untouched donor above and below your strip scar to have FUE harvesting done. Whereas if you start with FUE, little by little, you're depleting that area.
Interesting. Right, because with FUE, it's more diffuse, right? They're taking
individual.
Correct, I see. Whereas with FUT, it's more of a...
It's the sweet spot. You're taking a small piece of skin out, stitching it together. And I always thought it's pretty amazing that in a 1 centimeter strip, you can get, ear to ear, you can get 2,000 to 2,500 grafts with a very narrow piece of scalp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're extracting all of the follicles in that area, whereas with FUE, you're having to pick and choose. So if you did FUE in a 1 centimeter wide area, ear to ear, there's no way you'd get 2,000 grafts because you'd have to completely strip the area of hair.
100%. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The way I like to say it is, utilizing my own case as an example, is, I had 2 bad strips early on, and that was just, the luck that I had at the time. But every surgery I had as a repair case from 2002, was it 2000? I forgot my first year of my repair. Anyway, several surgeries after that were strip, and then I was basically stripped out. But after 7 or 8 strips, I believe I had, my scalp, I could have another strip, but we're trying to play it safe. But with all that strip taken out, all those strips taken out, I still have 1 donor scar that's very, very thin considering, and the areas above and below that scar are virtually untouched. It's virgin scalp, or at least it was until 6 years ago when I had my first real FUE surgery. So that allowed me to get, at the time, almost 1,000 grafts that I wouldn't be getting out of strip, because we decided to not do strip. And if I wanted to go back again, I could probably get another 1,000, maybe 1,500 grafts, depending on how aggressive we want to be, trying to keep that visual threshold from being crossed of looking too thin in my donor. And that's what it's all about, is the visual threshold that you don't want to cross. And so in my case, after all the surgeries I've been through, I'm still able to get roughly another 2,000 grafts that I couldn't get with strip on top of it. And that allows me to tweak what I want to tweak. I might want to thicken something up. I might want to fill in my crown a little bit more. I have options. But if I was stuck with strip, I'd be done.
And if you would have started with FUE, you would have been done a long time ago.
And if I'd started with FUE, I would have been done a long time ago. I wouldn't have nearly the coverage I have now.
Interesting. So it sounds like FUT is the initial way to go, especially if you're if you're needing more than a couple thousand grafts, or you may need more grafts in the future. Starting out with FUT would give you more opportunity for more harvest later on.
Well, it gives you options, and I think there are many cases where strip is not warranted, where FUE is, in my opinion, it is the way to go
Really?
from the start. And those are cases where the family profile does not show aggressive hair loss on either side, on paternal or maternal side of the family. There's no visual indicators on the patient themselves. They're on preventative medications to maintain what they have, and they don't have a lot of hair loss to begin with. Maybe a Norwood 3, maybe a Norwood 4 of some sort, Norwood 4A, where the crown's still intact. There's an argument for going FUE only. But I try to avoid those recommendations and talking about different doctors that are promoting 10,000, 15,000 grafts via FUE. God bless them, and God save those patients, because we don't have any long-term results in those guys. And I guarantee you that hair is not going to stay, because in order to get that much hair with FUE in 1 or 2 sessions, my God, you have to go way outside of the actual donor, safe donor, into the fringe to get all those hairs that are susceptible to DHT and senility, senile alopecia, and all those conditions that thin out hair as people age. It's not a good idea to go for such big sessions.
And just one last quick question. I know I have other callers. Between FUT and FUE, what is the viability of a difference of the actual follicle, the downtime between harvesting, taking the strip out, and then you have to harvest each hair before it goes into the scalp, or going directly FUE pretty much from taking it out to putting it in? I know there's some downtime in between there, but what about that? And I know a lot of it comes down to the expertise of the surgeon and his crew and the people that are working with him, because obviously he's not. The surgeon is not doing the whole ball of wax from point A to point Z.
Doc, you want to take that?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting question. So I always used to say strip was a little bit faster than FUE. Lately in my office, I think it's pretty much neck to neck. I used to say the strip was done quicker because we start making I do not make pre-made sites, first of all. I don't make pre-made sites because I want to know exactly what I have, exactly how many 3s, exactly how many 4s, exactly how many 2s. I make different size blades for my sites. I'm not for my grafts. I'm not a one-size-fit-all guy. So this whole idea of making 2,000 holes in somebody's head before you know what you harvested doesn't sound good to me. So I'm always making my sites once we know what we got. In FUE, that's after the whole harvesting is completed, then we start making sites. So for 2,500 grafts, it may take 2 to 3 hours before you've made one recipient site incision. Whereas with a strip, as the technician starts slivering and dissecting the follicles, they're giving me a rough estimate. So I'm already starting to make sites while they're still preparing the follicles from the strip. So it's kind of happening simultaneously is what I would say.
Yeah.
The story about out-of-body time and viability, we use hypothermosol with liposomal ATP. We've been able to leave grafts. I had one patient once who came in from out of town from a foreign country. He had a stomach virus. In the middle of surgery, he was vomiting. He said, I can't stay here. We put all his grafts in the fridge. We put him in the next day, and he had a beautiful, beautiful result and great growth. So that's awesome. Out-of-body time with either technique I don't think if you're using these higher tech storage solutions is not as important, but that would be the explanation, as just the recipient site creation in a strip can start immediately after you get an estimate, whereas with FUE, you got to wait till the whole harvesting's done and the patient's flipped over.
Oh, that's interesting.
There you go. That's a hell of an answer.
Very. Would it be possible to ask something else came to mind that I thought was important to ask, and I don't know what your expertise is in this area, but I've never had a scalp psoriasis. I wouldn't say scalp psoriasis, seborrheic dermatitis in my scalp ever prior to my hair transplant. Notice that in the areas where the hair was transplanted, I'm now using keto 2%. I think it's the not the no. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's the prescription of
Nizoral 2%.
What's that?
Nizoral
exactly.
2%.
I'm using that a couple of times a week, and I am seeing some improvement. And then I think the idea is then to maintain results is to use it once every week or two after the first 30 days. But is that something that is not unheard of?
I've seen it. When was your procedure done?
No, go ahead.
When was the procedure?
It was in March of 2000, about a year and a half ago now.
Okay, so relatively recently. Look, I had patients that area do develop scaling or seborrheic dermatitis, sometimes scurf. I don't know whether subconsciously patients just are a little bit afraid to wash and shampoo the area sometimes as the grafts are growing in. So I have seen people come in at 4 or 5 months and they're being overly gentle because even though I told them you can go and it's funny, everybody who comes in at the 2-week follow-up, I give them a noogie and I say, look, you can't mess it up now. Don't be scared. Yeah. Wash your head normally. And they all freak out like, don't touch me. But people still amazingly are very hesitant and scared to touch their grafts. So I feel like a lot of times maybe as the skin is turning over, there's a lot of things going on there. The new grafts are growing. They're shedding the crust. I think lack of proper cleaning can just cause scalp buildup, which we know is not good for growth.
Right.
So when I see that, we always give a good keratolytic, get it cleaned up. And then, usually by telling people don't be gentle in the area, it gets better.
Okay.
How would you say that you're washing your hair now, a year and a half after your procedure?
Oh, I would say after the first 30 days, I was following your advice. I was being not overly aggressive, but I was certainly getting in there with my fingertips, not with my fingernails, with my fingertips and really, working it in well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that because, like Dr. Nusbaum said, a lot of patients do tend to baby their recipient area far too much, even a year plus after their surgery. But another thing to consider is, when you go through a hair transplant, good for you for not having any shedding, but there are a lot of physiological changes that are going on, and even a year and a half out from the surgery, where the scalp is still recovering to some degree. May not be on the vascular level, because all the new vascular connections have been made, but just the way that the physiology of the scalp tries to recover can be separate from the vascular regeneration. So you will go through, some patients, and it is definitely the minority, they will go through some changes where, some of the glands and some of the even the pores in the scalp have been altered due to all the incisions. All these little things change, and it is a temporary thing from what I've seen, and I've been through it myself. I remember it was maybe a year or two after one of my surgeries. God knows which one it was, when I was still working in clinic, and I had such a bad, legitimate seborrheic dermatitis outbreak. I thought my future in the hair industry was in question because hair was coming out with large
scales around the hair shaft.
They were big too, like they were like silver dollar size, just peeling off my scalp. It was crazy. Yeah, yours most likely isn't like that.
No,
it's probably pretty mild. And I have to actually ask: has it been diagnosed as actual seborrheic dermatitis?
No, it hasn't. I have not received an official diagnosis, and I am going to be seeing Dr. Bainham again soon, just for
Okay.
a follow-up.
I'd be
He's a
interested to know.
dermatologist. He'll know how to treat you properly, and
Yeah.
he may want to give you a mild corticosteroid to help
Yeah.
with that as well. And there's some other things that he could do. He's certainly more than qualified to be able to take care of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's already called in a couple of prescriptions for me, and one of them included the 2% prescription of that shampoo, and that seems to be helping. But initially I noticed some white scaling, and I certainly know the difference between that, and I've seen dandruff where it actually falls under the shoulders of your shirt. You can see it
good.
little tiny, but these were actually thicker. I would say 2 or 3 millimeter in diameter, round, white, very noticeable patches that were stuck to my scalp, and you would have to go in there and scrape it off, and I didn't want to do that because I was afraid that the would come out with it. And so, but just following this routine seems to have made a big difference, and I don't see those scales anymore.
Well, good.
Great.
That's progress. That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Good for you. Follow Dr. Bainham's instructions. He knows what he's talking about, and call back to another show. I'd like to follow up and see how this works out for you.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, guys. I love your show. I just discovered it just before I called, and I'm glad I found it.
Well, good timing. It's the first one in like 4 months, so good job.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
have a great show.
Thanks for calling.
Best of luck.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, great call. Great questions from Jerry or Larry or what? I didn't catch his actual name in Los Angeles. But I want to jump back to the idea of female hair transplants. I knew this about you. Like you're talking to him about FUT. I'd like to know the argument or the logic that you present to them when they say, "Well, I heard it." Probably the number one objection is the scar. So how do you deal with that objection?
I show them pictures of scars, and then I have my consultant walk in the room who I've done an FUT procedure on, who nobody believes has had a transplant because the results are so natural. And she picks up the back of her head and says, "Find my scar."
Yeah.
And then they can't see it. And they say, "Wow." And I say, even if you didn't heal like this, because nobody heals the same, your hair is 16 inches long. You're never going to see this. And can you imagine? I say, guys, hair grows half an inch a month.
Yeah.
If I shave enough of an area to get the number of grafts that you want out, especially in these, hairline sort of lowering facial framing type of cases where I do use around 2,000 grafts to make it nice and thick and full, the amount of area that we would have to shave is immense.
Yeah.
So, I have had one patient, she was in the modeling industry, and just mentally, she just said, "No doctors cut me. I'm just not letting anybody cut me." And we did it with FUE. She put extensions on soon after the hair started to grow to get back to her modeling life. But I mean, the overwhelming majority of women have strip, and I just show them the area. They go, "Well, how much area do you have to shave?" And they come in and show me this little box. "Is it like this?" And I go, "No, it's not like that. It's the whole back of your head." And they go, "Oh my God, I don't want that. That doesn't make sense."
Yeah.
So, and we all know women sometimes are tougher than men, so they don't complain about the discomfort from the strip too much.
Of course. Yeah. But I think, like the way I describe it when I'm talking to ladies about this is, the first question I ask is, "Oh, so how often do you shave your head?" And they're like,
Exactly.
"What do you mean? What do you mean? How?
What do you mean?
My hair is like 2 feet long. What are you talking about?" It's like, well, you do know that FUE is designed explicitly to avoid the strip scar for guys that want to have shorter haircuts. It has nothing to do with women. And do you like the fullness of your hair? Like, is that something that you like about hair?
You like your ponytail? Right.
Women, yeah, exactly. Women are always trying to, they're being marketed to by these companies with these shampoos for fuller hair. Do you like your fuller hair? Well, yeah. Then what are you going to do about reducing the density from 2,000 FUE grafts in the back of your scalp? Well, what do you mean? Well, you're literally reducing the density of your donor on a 1-to-1 ratio. With strip, you're not doing that. And they start to think about it, and they're like, "Oh, so my hair will be thinner in the back." Technically, yes. Will you notice it? Maybe, maybe not. But then, what happens if you want another surgery? Then there is a higher likelihood that you might notice it feels a bit thinner in the back. It's not quite as full as, women like it to feel. Something to consider. So
The other aspect that I always like to explain to women, I do feel obviously all forms of hair restoration surgery is an art to a certain extent. We know that.
Yeah.
But I do feel like female hairlines, at least facial framing, when we're doing a lot of temple work down here, it really is very artsy. The angles have to be perfect. The grafts that you choose in each site have to be perfect, and they have to be aligned perfectly. So the other advantage of strip is that we can keep the hair shafts about 1 centimeter or so long to see actually the caliber of the hair shaft that's coming out and the angle of the curl, which
Right.
with an FUE graft, it's a lot harder to see. Yeah, I know it's a 1, but is it a thick one or is it a thin one? Which
Yeah.
way does the curl go?
Yeah.
So I actually like having a little bit of length, especially in female cases, to be able to properly kind of design those temples and not really do a preview, but it just allows for, I think, a more natural, smoother result, and gives you another little piece of information that you can use to help make it an even more artistic, perfect type of result for a patient.
Right. Well said. Well said. And with that said, it's 1-888-491-0512 for North America, toll free. If you're in the UK, you can call in 044-20-812-67771. You're watching the main event with me, Joe Tillman, and my special guest today, Dr. Aron Nusbaum out of Miami Hair in Miami, Florida. I want to talk about, until we get a phone call, but I want to talk about your results in general. And I encourage anyone watching this, if you haven't seen Dr. Nussbaum's Instagram, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's at Miami Hair. Is that your?
The Hair Doctors or
the Hair
Dr.
Doctors.
Nussbaum.
Okay.
Or
the hair,
Dr. Nussbaum.
At Dr. Nussbaum.
The Hair Doctors.
Or at the Hair Doctors, and the clinic is
right.
Miami Hair in Miami, Florida. So, if you have been following, or you haven't been following, and you do soon, you're going to see that. And I've talked about this openly. Dr. Nussbaum, especially crazy because he's using the robot in some cases, has put out some of the most natural results I have seen in my 20+ year career. And I'm talking about consistently, not every once in a while knocks one out of the park. He's one of those guys that does this day in and day out. And I want you, Doc, to talk about your a little bit about your approach to creating the hairlines that you create.
So as you guys know, some of you know my backstory. I know Joe's told it well. I learned to do this from my father, who's one of the, legends or,
OG.
pioneers in this field. And what I think was, my father got his reputation not only for being a very honest, sweet, gentle soul, but his work was extremely natural in the times where transplants weren't so natural. So that's where I think he kind of made a name for himself. When we started working together, basically I was following his kind of guidelines. And what I think has really, really helped us is the irregularities and the macro irregularities that I draw in the hairlines. I know that a lot of people try their best to recreate it and they just make a couple peaks or a couple mounds. My hairlines, really, I take a long time in the morning designing everything. First, I drew, of course, an initial line just for positioning. And then, sort of like an artist, will take a couple different permanent, my staff jokes with me. They say I need 15 markers in a day to draw one hairline because of all the little adjustments I'm doing. And I literally like to map out every position of every peak, mound, trough. So I sort of set myself up in the morning to make a clear guideline or fingerprint of what I want to do. So I think just simply by following, I guess, my father's guidance of sort of the way he used to draw his irregularities, that kind of put me ahead up against everybody else. Then, as modern technology came up, I have started to increase my magnification that I'm using to create recipient sites tremendously. When I started, I was at 2.5x. I'm up to 5 now.
Nice.
So I'm able to pack the grafts really, really, really close together. And we're using smaller and smaller recipient site blades. I use, cold steel blades, pre-made, pre-cut, size to the follicle. But I'm basically, for my FUE cases, using a 0.5 to a 0.9, millimeter incision, which is tiny.
Yeah.
So by using the small grafts, I'm in the small incisions, I'm able to pack the grafts closer together. With the high magnification, I'm able to, make sure that there's no space there. And the last thing is just, I would say the next piece that really has helped is just the use of ultra refined singles. So everybody knows you need single hairs in the front. Well, most everybody knows you need to do that. I feel like I've found the right balance of, if you have too many singles, like close to 500, it can be a little bit transparent. If you have close to 250, it can look a little pluggy. So I'm usually doing anywhere from 350 to 420 singles in almost every patient. Obviously that changes coarse hair, fine hair. But
Right.
Furthermore, we've started to divide ours, which I know some other well-known doctors are doing. We've started to divide up the singles into ultra-fine singles, fine singles, and coarser singles. So a lot of times, we have to create singles if we don't have enough. And usually those are split from 2 hair grafts. Those are usually a little bit coarser than some of the natural single hairs that you can get from extracting. So, those are some of the things that we're doing. Obviously, we have high excellent growth rates and take rates, but I think the high magnification, the small blades for recipient sites, and just the complete random irregularities is really what's doing this and helping us create these results.
So what, I mean, I know these things, and it's great for you to explain that. And yeah, I wanted to give you a chance to do your spiel there. It's really good. But what you said about using the microscopes to create singles, I mean, forget about the part about separating fine, coarse, different classifications
Medium,
of singles.
right.
Just the ability to create singles from doubles in and of itself is an almost non-existent art form now. And I say that because I forgot what year it was, but around 2017, I made that video where I was talking about hairlines, and that's when I first kind of reintroduced the idea of microscopes to like the researching public. They had no clue what the benefit was.
Crazy.
And I know, right? And I'm really happy with that video. It's got like 800,000 views or 750,000 views, something like that. And I actually got doctors, or I heard from doctors that bought some microscopes because of that video. And because of that video, you hear about people, the layperson on, whatever platform, forums, talking about doctors using microscopes. They always talk about it. And even some of the clinics talk about it like this, the newer clinics, they're using the microscopes to quote unquote separate the singles and doubles and triples. And I never moved on from that. Like I made a part 2 to talk more about microscopes, but these clinics and these patients don't realize that the microscopes aren't there to separate the 1s, 2s, and 3s. They're there to, I mean, you obviously want that to happen, but they're also there to create your 1s and 2s where you don't have enough out of larger grafts.
And at least in our practice, we like, I don't like the extra cap of epidermis on my grafts. I want my grafts as cleaned and trimmed as possible. So a lot of people come to my office and they say, wow, I saw this picture on the internet. This guy was so bloody and crusty all over his head, but I see your patients 2 days later, they look nice and clean. Well, the other part about this is under the microscope, not only are we sorting, not only are we creating singles, but we're trimming off the extra fat, that without trimming the extra fat off the graft, we're not going to fit it in a 0.5 millimeter site. Without cleaning that extra cap of epidermis off, you're not going to be able to pack the grafts close together. So those are sort of the extra steps that I think when people come to me and say, what is so different about you? Why are you charging X when they're charging Y? It's because of all these subtle nuances that people don't even know have to happen. I say, yeah, at the other clinic, they're pulling it out and sticking it in. They don't know whether there's a telogen hair attached to it. They're not cleaning the epidermis off of it. And, they're just putting hair in there. And that's why I think a lot of the grafts are a little bit spaced out and stuff like that.
Well, and that's interesting because, while you're talking about this, it's like, well, that goes back to the argument of, I was reading something from someone said the other day is like, oh, well, all the doctors in the US are crap and, they're just charging because, they're trying to rip you off, which is a really uneducated, obviously, way of looking at things. But what you're actually paying for, and this isn't across the board by any stretch of imagination, but what you're actually paying for, and in cases where the clinic has been around for quite a while, they have a name for themselves, and they actually have the results to back up, their reputation. What you're actually paying for is you're paying for an experience that you can't quantify unless you actually understand the surgery itself. And that comes down to the cap issue you're talking about, the really fine trimming to meet your standard of, the diameter for the incision for that graft to go into, because you're creating your incisions based on the size of the graft, not the other way around, which is very old school to do that. Oh, well, we got these grafts, they're 1.2 or 1.7. Let's make those.
Right, they're fat, so that's how size the blade is. Right.
Exactly. So it is the inverse of that, where you're trimming them down and then creating the incisions based on what you're creating, not just what you're getting. And it's a huge difference. And so, to quantify that with just, oh, well, it's experience. Well, it's a lot more in depth than that. And so anyone that's watching this that thinks, oh, well, a US, clinic, they're charging, X what they're charging because they're ripping you off, or because of the cost of living, which is a factor actually. But you are paying in some cases for an experience or a level of experience that you absolutely cannot get with one of these. I'm not going to name a country. I'm not going to name any type of clinic, but with clinics that are, I don't even know how I can explain it. Average cost for today's market. I think that's probably the fairest and most diplomatic way to put that. And at the same time, it's not to discount some of these very inexpensive clinics, because some of them are doing very good work. But in the case of, since we have Dr. Nusbaum here, in the case of his clinic, he's a second generation specialist, and the type of things that you just heard him talk about, that's just scratching the surface. Actually, there's so many other things going on behind the scenes as far as like the experience and know-how of his technicians. That's what you're getting. You're getting that type of not just dedication, but understanding of what they're doing and what that end goal will be based on thousands of cases, not just from himself, but his father, Dr. Bernie Nusbaum. So I'm glad you explained that, because I think that's an important factor that a lot of people don't understand. I remember seeing something yesterday. This guy was saying, well, I was quoted $21,000 by this doctor in some region of the US. And people were like, go to Turkey, go to India, go to, Thailand, or it's like, why? Like, I know who, I have a pretty good idea who he's talking about. He's a damn good hair transplant surgeon. So if he's okay with the money, then why shouldn't he go to this guy? Because he has a level of experience. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the American market for or the doctors in the American market, they're the ones that defined what refinement is in the hair transplant industry. You weren't getting it out of the UK, for God's sake. Hell no. You weren't getting it out of Europe or anywhere in Asia until maybe arguably 15 years ago. But it started in the US. It started with Bobby Limmer. It started with, Jerry Wong. It started with Bob Bernstein, the old guard that actually cared about refining their craft to where it looks natural today. So I wanted to get that out there. And I mean, you feel free to give your thoughts on that, but I think it's important for people to know that and understand it when they're doing their research.
Yeah, I always tell patients in the morning, I introduce everybody in the room. These are the people that will be helping me. This is my physician assistant. These are my technicians.
Mhm.
And back here, there's all these people under the microscope. And they go, what are they doing? I say, it's the accounting department and the processing plant. It's not just we've taken them out and putting them in. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I said, if you hear us whispering and talking, we're talking about your grafts. We're making adjustment. This is a whole, it's not like we just yank them out and put them in.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. So, let's see, are there any calls coming in? No, not yet. But so if anyone wants to call in, the number is 1-888-491-0512. That is toll free in North America. If you're in the UK, you can give us a call, 044-20-812-67771. Lines are open. In the meantime, I'm going to there's a couple of questions in the chat room that interested me. Let's see, what was it? Ray West says, hello, Dr. Nussbaum, recovering fine
Hi,
here
Ray.
in Key West. Good for him. Terry, that's the guy's name that called earlier. He thanked us for taking his call. Yes, James Dawes wants to know if you're still taking dutasteride.
I still have hair, guys. You know? So,
yeah.
Where is it?
He's got it right there.
It's there under my desk.
Exactly. That's good. That's good. I like that fade cut you got in the back there too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, TJ Ed has a question. It's a very common question, and he, from when we're talking about FUT, he says, "What if the scar from an FUT stretches over the years? Can they implant hairs and scar tissue to cover it, and will the hairs grow just like the rest of the scalp?" That's
Answer is yes. We very oftentimes do transplant into scars. You have to be careful in the directions that you make the sites. I will say that it is a little challenging to get the hairs to grow at the exact same angles as they're coming out of the scalp, just because, as we always know that even though if you always have to make your incision a little bit more acute, the graft always lifts about 5 to 10 degrees when it grows back. And it's tough, especially in scar tissue, when you bend your blade and try to make a very flat acute site. Sometimes it makes it a little larger. So we do our best to make them flat. They definitely will grow. Typically, to fill in a scar, it usually takes 300 to 400 grafts, depending on how wide the scar is. 200 to 400 is what I would say. And I still always warn the patient, if your goal is to go get a number 1 haircut after a big wide strip scar, you're still going to see something. You may see a little deviation or change in hair angle, which may still tip you off that you had a strip. So if you're just trying to have a little bit more flexibility and make you feel better that the scar's covered, that's fine. But if you're expecting to completely reverse everything that you've done, I don't know how well that's going to really come to fruition. So a lot of people come to me with that idea and they end up not doing it because it's not really going to, yes, the graft will grow in there, but it's not really going to achieve what their ultimate goal is. So that's a lot of counseling that I think has to be done as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. A lot of counseling has to go into that to set the expectations, because far too many people are saying, oh, well, get an FUT. And this is, to kind of look on the backside of what we're talking about with the FUT.
Yeah, the other side
is, oh, well, then you just get some FUE into your scar and, then you're good. Not really the case in every outcome. So it does depend on, obviously who the doctor was that did the strip. It depends on how you heal. The physiology is always a variable that we can't account for. So many different things that go into that. But one thing I think is interesting is he's talking about, or part of his question was, if it stretches over the years.
Yeah, that was a little odd to me.
Well, but that's the thing that people, I'll never, I remember reading about this, early years in the forums. That was the assumption that your scar continues to stretch, and that's not the case. So
I don't know I disagree with that.
Yeah,
the scar is the scar.
Yeah, a scar will pretty much be complete, or depending on your physiology, of course, but maybe 6 months. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. 6 months on the outside, you have a good idea. There's still some healing going underneath the skin. So the full scar process, is probably a full year.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of still stretching, what I can tell you is the few scars that I've had that have stretched a little bit because of the intrinsic healing, like I say, I do the same trichophytic closure on everybody. Everybody's scar looked perfect at their suture removal 2 weeks after the surgery.
Yeah, that's always the case.
It was perfectly, and then by 6 months, I think you can have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get. I disagree with that notion, if it does exist, that as years goes on, the scar stretches further.
Yeah, I do too. And, the only exceptions to that would be like if there's some sort of
Ehlers-Danlos or something like that, an underlying connective tissue disease or something like that.
Of course. So good question though, because it's unfortunately a very common misperception about how scars can form, and then the idea that they continue to stretch over time, which is not the case. Matthew Tullis, okay, good question. I live in Washington State. Do you recommend traveling to your clinic for surgery if no accredited doctors exist closer to home? Well, first, my only question to you is, what do you mean by accredited? Because there is no board.
There is no accredited.
Yeah, there's no real accreditation as far as hair transplant surgery goes. It's kind of like the black sheep of specialties. There's no real accreditation for it. What it comes down to is finding a doctor that meets your base requirements for, I believe, what should be the first thing to consider is naturalness. Because if it's not natural, then it fails.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Like coverage, great. Unnatural, not so great. So, look at that. And more importantly, understand what natural means. A lot of people have a problem with that. But yeah, I mean, if no doctor can recommend that you travel or go do anything. It's up to you. I mean, I'll let Dr. Nusbaum carry on with that. But yeah, I mean, it's your call completely. And
yeah, I mean, of course you got to go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, we got a call. I'm going to put him on hold real quick, and you can continue with your answer. Hold on.
I'll go quick. Yeah, of course. That has to be your comfort level. If you're comfortable traveling, if you're comfortable traveling home after the procedure, some people do like to be closer to home. But at the end of the day, you have to realize, and I try to tell patients this all the time, this is a decision that you're going to you're going to live with for the rest of your life. And you're going to look at it every morning, every day that you wake up in the mirror. So
Right.
if you got to inconvenience yourself a little bit and take a trip somewhere because you feel like you're going to get a better result there, then that's what you have to do. I've had patients travel from Australia to come see me, multiple actually, and that's probably the farthest. I mean, that's not a quick flight by any means.
It doesn't get much further than that.
They do it.
So. All right. So we got the caller on the line. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Hey, caller, you're on the air with Dr. Aron Nusbaum. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm Matthew. I'm calling from Washington State.
That was you.
Think that there's a delay, so I think my question may have been answered, but the sound cut out when I called in. I apologize for that.
No worries. I muted you so the doc could continue with his answer. But yeah, go ahead. Ask your question or continue. Expound on it, and the doc will be happy to answer.
First of all, Joe, thank you for everything. You've helped me with a lot of questions over the years. And so Dr. Nussbaum, your name came up on a recent episode. And what really got me to your website and looking into researching about you and your dad was that, as friend Joe said, you guys aren't blowing up your Instagram and TikTok because they're too busy doing surgeries. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want. And I started looking at before and afters. But I thought, I haven't pinned down any surgeons that are closer to Washington State. And I'm wondering what you and your dad would recommend. If it were you, would you travel that far to get the very best procedure and the best care for my specific case? And if you could be closer. And then additionally, I think if there's time for an additional question, I'm actually experimenting right now with a year on oral finasteride and oral minoxidil.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get to a year and my before and after pictures look the same, I'm not going through with the surgery.
Based on what logic? What's the logic on that?
My logic on that is that if I don't notice a stoppage or an improvement in miniaturization, then that would lead me to believe that after having surgery, if I continue to experience loss in other areas, then any medication I take won't keep what I have left, and I would run out of donor hair. And that's my logic on that.
Would the cessation of all loss that wouldn't be enough for you? Like if you stopped losing,
right? Stability. Because I tell patients, and this is just my opinion, I'm starting to. I tell patients this is an ongoing progressive condition. Stability is a victory. Yeah. Stopping something that's going to get worse in its track is a win. So when you say if your photos are the same, you would not do the surgery, I would say if your photos are the same, that means the treatment is actually working. With finasteride, 90% of men stop losing, only 60% regrow. So as long as you're in the 90 and not the 10% that don't respond to finasteride, a failure to finasteride and minoxidil is a progression of hair loss getting worse.
Yeah.
If you stay the same, that actually means it's working. And we have a lot of patients, I'm sure, Joe, you've heard this a million times. I didn't really think the meds were working and I stopped them. And then, oh my God, I realized what a mistake that was.
Yeah.
So I would tell you,
Well,
we'll go back to your first question in a second, but I would tell you, I think it's great that you're on those medications. I think it's great that you're taking those medications before considering surgery. I obviously don't know the specifics of your donor area, the extent of your hair loss, but if you do see stability and cessation of loss, I do think that that indicates that you are successfully being treated with therapies and you are a candidate for hair transplant surgery based on stopping of ongoing hair loss. I tell everybody this is like a bucket with a leak. And there's no more, eventually the water from the well runs out. So you got to stop the leak at the bottom and then pour the water in very carefully.
Yeah.
To go back quickly to your first question, I think it's similar to what Joe said. I'm not going to name particular names, but I know you're in Washington State. I'm humbled that you would, consider flying very far to come see us. I think there are a few surgeons that are great in that general part of the, continent or world, if you will say it. So you have to see who you're most comfortable with. You would not be the farthest traveled person to come see me. It really isn't a big inconvenience. You stay in Miami for 2 or 3 nights. You fly in, we meet you, we do a virtual, then we meet you the day before in person. We make sure everything checks out that we spoke about. If anything doesn't look like it was in the virtual, we postpone and we cancel the procedure. We do the procedure the next day. You sleep at a hotel. You see me the next morning for a post-op visit. And then if you're comfortable, you can get on a plane and go. The altitude doesn't do anything to the hair follicles or increase swelling or anything like that. Or you stay one more night just to be near us and you go home. So it's 2 to 3 nights in Miami. Not a big deal. Not to say that I agree or disagree with there's nobody good in your area.
Yeah.
okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, the reason for that other question is because I was on a topical formula for a year, and I simply had financial problems and couldn't afford $300, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And I found that the finasteride and the minoxidil didn't even come close in terms of price. And the
100%.
research that I'd done was, and so I switched. But in that switching, whether it was that or life stress, I had a pretty significant shed, went to get my hair cut, and then they did the mirror thing after, and I was like, that isn't me. So a lot of these questions are coming from that freak out, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. Depending on what you're going through, the timing is unfortunate, where you had the shed, you were apparently going through some sort of life stress, and you happened to switch medications. None of that bodes well for your hair. And I tell people that if you do change midstream, one of the worst things people can do is start medication after they have the hair transplant, like a few months, or switch their medication after the transplant, because you just don't know, whatever
hair
happens
cycle.
as far as the shed, you have no clue what's the cause of it. And that's the thing. I always tell people, don't throw the kitchen sink at your hair loss. Do it one piece at a time. And give it time, so if it works on its own or if it doesn't, and then you can add something to it or replace it or whatever. But what you're talking about, the financial investment in some of these specialty topicals, I feel your pain on that. I get it. I mean, some of these manufacturers, they want to capitalize on their investment. You can't blame them for it. But they're not always up to par either. They're not always up to snuff in their effectiveness. I don't know which one you're taking, but in my view, start with the basics. Start with
Correct.
Old school finasteride ProScar. Actually, that's my favorite. I still take that to this day. It's the original finasteride. And if you're going to do minoxidil, with all the information we're seeing now, I don't know how you feel about this, doc, but oral minoxidil, 100%. You couldn't, like, I think topical minoxidil is a waste of time. Absolute waste of time, unless it's mixed with a good topical finasteride formulation as well. But oral is the best as far as your finasteride and your minoxidil to start with. You're switching.
I have a question for you. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Joe.
no, go
I have
ahead,
a quick question for the caller. Did you originally get on topical because you were worried about side effects from oral? Was that
No, I
the
didn't know
reason
about
that you
oral at the
originally did it?
time. No, I didn't know about oral at the time, and I had
Oh.
a consult with a surgeon that had that offered topical as a solution prior to surgery,
Mhm.
and it
See,
was
to
amazing.
me,
It
that's
worked.
ridiculous. Right. So to me, I know that you had a good experience with it, but when people come to my office, I say, look, and they say, oh, I want PRP injections, and there's this topical things. Just like Joe said, you have a 98% chance to take finasteride and not have any side effects, just have it help your hair. It costs $20 a month. What do you have to lose? In 30 years of prescribing the medication, myself, my father, international colleagues, I know this is another subject, we have not seen post-finasteride syndrome. That's a whole nother can of worms, but we haven't really seen permanent side effects.
You did it now,
So,
doctor. Let me talk about you on Reddit now.
oh boy, I'm in trouble. Yeah, that's it. Don't okay, delete that part. But we haven't seen it, at least. So what I always tell patients, I'm surprised that the surgeon at the beginning was telling you to do topical. I push oral meds first. And then if I get hesitancy, or if I say, well, I'm not doing that and I don't take pills, then I say, okay, well, you could take the oral 3 days a week. I don't have data on, and I always tell patients, I think this is an interesting subject. I think oral daily finasteride is better than, in my opinion, from what I've seen, daily topical finasteride. I have a lot of people, and I know there's some other doctors that sometimes start their patients a little bit lower, like maybe 3 days a week on the oral. I don't know if there's data on 3 day a week oral versus a daily topical. That's always a question that I always tell patients, but I'm surprised that any surgeon would tell you that their first line of defense or their first recommendation would be a topical instead of the oral, not only for effectiveness reasons, but also cost to the patient.
Yeah. Well said.
I appreciate that question. I'm glad you mentioned that. And again, that just pushes my decision making further east on the continent
Oh
and
boy.
further away. But that's what I rely on you guys for. And I'm not willing to go to Turkey, but I'm glad that I'm grateful for your answer, because that makes it sound a lot more doable for me and for leaving my wife home with my young kids.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I really can't stress how much there's just no YouTube videos. There's no interviews. There's no other products. We do surgery, and that offers a lot of peace of mind up front that isn't really available with other places closer by. I'm really
Thank
glad
you
that
for that.
Glad we could help.
Yes, thanks. And I'm gonna hang up and listen to the rest of the interview on YouTube. Thanks,
Well, before you do, let me ask you one
You're
last
not
question.
dismissed yet.
Yeah. Let me ask one last question. So if your hair loss were to stabilize now, would you be happy with it as it is, or would you be in a position where you'd have to have, in your mind, you'd have to have more hair?
I would absolutely need to have a procedure, because I would still have a Norwood frontal hairline, and it's getting to a point where I'm sure you can understand this, but I'm not combing my hair anymore. I'm placing it. And
I haven't heard that one, but
I'm sorry to laugh, but that's brilliant.
A good one.
That's good.
But you get it. You visually understand exactly what I mean. And
Yeah.
I just can't place anymore in a way where it's starting to look like, a hipster comb over.
I'm stealing that one, actually. That's good.
Yeah, me too.
Please, whatever is helpful. So yes, the front and the temple points, just regardless of, even on the previous topical, the improvements came from, I want to say it's the crown, the back top. I sometimes get that That's where I noticed the improvement. The density up front changed a little bit,
Mhm.
but still there's an outline there that's a little first die
But
hard
remember,
section.
that's normal.
So
Mhm.
The meds work better in the crown than the hairline, in my opinion. So I have a lot of guys that only have frontal hair loss, and they take finasteride, and they say it's not working. My hairline's still going back, and I go, well, is your crown stable? Yeah. Well, then the finasteride's working.
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and I do know that and understand it, but yeah, I would still want to have the surgery for the front.
Fair enough. Okay. I like asking that question because I try to get people to stop and think about their situation, because sometimes we get so involved in our research because we see the problem, and a year or two goes by and we don't stop to ask ourselves, do we really want this? You know, what if I am able to keep my hair the way it is now? Would I be okay with it for the rest of my life? Or is it an absolute, do I need more hair on top of what I have now? So that's an important question to ask, and you answered it. And I think that helps you to guide yourself in the future.
For sure. Yeah. Again, I'm glad you asked. And yeah, thank you both for taking the call and helping me out with this. This
Absolutely.
is great. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, buddy.
Have a
Take
great
care.
night.
Bye-bye. All right. Good call. 1-888-491-0512. In the UK, it's 044-20-8126-7771. You are watching the main event with myself, Joe Tillman, and special guest, Dr. Aron Nusbaum out of Miami, Florida. And Doc, you did say that you have someone that's depending on you at home with a bun in the oven. Do you need to go, or are you okay to stick around for?
I have a little bit more time. We're okay.
Okay. All right. So you heard the guy.
10, 15 minutes.
You got him here for another 15 minutes, people. The phone lines are open. Again, it's 1-888-491-0512. If you're watching in the UK and Europe, it's 044-20-812-6771. And we got a call from area code 518. Let's see who this is. Hey, thanks for calling the main event. You're on live. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello. I hear a muffle.
Are
Sounds
you
like
underwater?
Can you hear me?
There we go.
There we go.
Oh, hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you now. What's your name?
Oh, perfect. Name is Tom.
Tom, where are you calling from, Tom?
Calling from Connecticut.
Connecticut, right on. Good to hear from you. What can we help you with?
Well, I had a question for you both, and I believe the previous caller kind of triggered my thoughts on it. But and I'm sorry if you get this a lot. It's my first time, one of my first times listening, calling in. But I was hoping to ask some medication questions.
Not a problem.
Sure.
Yeah. So, quick backstory on me. I have been noticing hair loss or thinking about it, dealing with it probably like the past 4 years or so. And
how old are you?
In my research, 33.
Okay, got it.
And in my research, I come across these different medications, finasteride, dutasteride, and then just some stories with it. And to be honest, I think I have scared myself so bad to trying these medications. And I have spoken to numerous dermatologists and doctors, and I get different answers from everyone.
Yeah.
I've spoken to some who they say finasteride's safe and you should try it. I've spoken to some who say they would never prescribe it. I've spoken to some who say PFS isn't real. I've spoken to some who say it absolutely is real. And I just cannot get a straight answer. And I drive myself crazy with it because, I am dealing with hair loss. I want to try something to stop it, but I'm so nervous that I will put myself in a worse situation by trying to stop it and having these terrible side effects. And I guess my question to you is as experts, have you seen these awful side effects? Do you take the medications yourselves? What's your experience with them?
Well, I'll go and start on this. Great questions, and I understand the trepidation you have based on doing your research, which is what people should do, is do their research. But when you do your research like this, you're asking experts the questions that are important to you. I think it's critical that you always question, I don't want to say the motives, of those that you're asking that they're giving these answers, but the experience. Because just because someone has an MD at the end of their name doesn't mean that they have the experience to speak on the subject with any sort of authority. And what I mean by that is a lot of times dermatologists, hair is something that, they don't really focus on.
They don't want to deal with.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with it. But patients come to them and they'll ask the questions, and that's one way to actually dismiss those people so they don't have to deal with them. Put the fear of God in you so you don't come back, so they can get back to whatever they like to do in their derm practice. But then also ask yourself, are they a hair transplant specialist? Do they have a focus on hair of any sort to where they can say, if you ask them, yes, I've actually had patients come in and have this issue, that's why I don't prescribe it? Or are they just repeating sound bites from others, or from some what kills me is the studies, and I'm putting air quotes around those because there are no studies on this. They're surveys of people that are already complaining about having problems. Not very scientific, right? So to answer the question, have I experienced that myself as far as people I've dealt with? My personal experience is I've never had anything like that. I've been taking finasteride off and on for 23 years, I think. No problems. I'm still here. Everything works, as far as you know. And
Yep.
the other equation, the other side of that equation is, do I know patients that have had these issues? And the answer is yes, I do, but not to the point of the PFS issue. And that part, I'll get back to that in a second. But the more common side effects of, the ED or the brain fog or, these things, I have run across that.
Me too.
But it's rare. It's very rare. But back to the PFS, I have an interesting story. Doc, you may not have heard me tell this one, but I remember talking to a patient when I was working in clinic, and he called me up and he said that he was actually part of the class action because of his PFS. There was a class action suit years ago, and he was a patient in the clinic I was working at, and I started talking to him, and I started asking him questions about his usage because I was genuinely interested. I'd never heard of any patient that I'd ever dealt with or my clinic had ever dealt with that had PFS, and I asked him. I said, "Well, in more or less terms, I said, well, what did you do? What did you do to deal with your PFS and your in the ED that you're dealing with?" He goes, "Oh, well, I would just take the other blue pill, the Viagra." And he goes, "But the great thing is I don't need to do that anymore. So it's all good." I was like, "I'm sorry? What do you mean you don't have to take it anymore?" He goes, "Everything works." Like, so you don't have PFS? And he paused and he's like, "Shit, I guess I don't." he didn't have permanent side effects, and that's what I was talking about, not the post-finasteride syndrome, but the permanent nature of that. And he was saying he did. And it was through my own series of questions, just genuine questions I genuinely wanted to know the answers to, that he realized I actually don't have permanent side effects. So a lot of it, I think, is mental. I'm not saying there's no one out there that has these issues, but in my 23 years, I've never met anyone that has had legitimate permanent side effects after discontinuation of these medications. Doc, what about you?
So basically same exact thing that Joe said. I myself have been taking dutasteride and finasteride for 23 years. As Joe said, everything works. No one's complaining. Everything's fine. Okay. Now, in terms of patients, I do the rare minority, whatever word you want to use. I do have some people that complain, "Hey, doc, I took the medicine and I don't quite feel like myself. My libido's a little bit down. erection, etc. Maybe ejaculate consistency is a little bit different. So I do get that occasionally. And what I tell people is, okay, no problem. Stop the medicine for a couple weeks, wait till everything goes back to normal, and then let's start it at Monday, Wednesday, Friday at bedtime instead of taking it every day.
Yeah.
And I would say half of the patients come back and they say, I'm fine at this new dose.
Mhm.
Then little by little over the years, they kind of are able to work themselves back up, some of them, to the full dose, and they're fine. So I agree with Joe that a lot of this is the patients say, I took it and I stopped. Well, did you have side effects? Not really. I was just scared to have them.
Yeah.
So what I try to encourage patients is, Dr. Google didn't go to medical school, number one. Like Joe said, trust somebody who's prescribed this to thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. Yes, it is within the repertoire of a dermatologist to prescribe this, but they're not seeing hair loss patients. They're doing cosmetics, they're doing skin checks, they're doing Mohs surgery. The hair loss doctors, the hair transplant specialists, those are the ones that are seeing the majority of patients that actually can give you, valuable data based on their experiences. I have not had a patient ever have a permanent side effect from the medications after discontinuation. I've had a couple that it's taken a couple months for everything to go back to normal, but I have not had anybody who has not been able to recover if they had it. And as Joe said, it's the minority of patients that take it that experience those side effects. It's not everybody by any means.
Yep.
So, and the study said 2%. So I always say, if you were a betting man, would you take a 98% chance that the bet's going to win? And most people say those are pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good odds. Yeah. Question on, maybe in your practices where you've seen these people that have had these side effects, is there any reoccurring themes? Like, have they come in and said,
yes,
I got my blood panels done and these were my numbers, or I have histories of whatever? Is there any reoccurring themes you see with the people that experience side effects?
The recurring theme I see are the people that are scared shitless of having side effects before they even start taking it.
Correct.
I think the worst thing I ever did was learn about it. Read the side effects.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna trick myself into it.
Yeah.
What I tell everybody is, tell yourself you're not taking finasteride. You're taking Dr. Nussbaum's vitamin. It's not Propecia. Just convince yourself. It's not just you're going to take this pill. Dr. Nussbaum said it's going to be okay. And if you feel anything funny, just call me and everything will go away.
Yeah.
So
I do have an approach that has helped. Well, I can't say it's helped everyone, but I can tell you I've never heard anyone say it didn't help them. And this is specifically for the people that have had side effects or are scared of having side effects to the point where they don't want to take the medication, but they try this. Okay. So you can replay this later on or take notes if you got a pen. But I came up with a titration approach years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you know this, Doc. I don't know if we talked about this, but you get your medication. And I always recommend ProScar just because you can get the 5 milligram tablet and cut it into quarters, and you wind up saving significant amount of money, and you're not having to risk the use of generics, which are that's a whole different discussion, but they're inconsistent in their efficacy and their quality. So take the name brand ProScar 5 milligram, cut it into quarters, and take 1 quarter every Monday for a month, just 1 day a week. See how you feel about that. Now, that's obviously not enough to do anything. The microdosing guys will argue that, but 1 quarter of a tablet of a 5 milligram tablet of ProScar, or if you take Propecia, 1 tablet of Propecia every Monday for a month. And then month 2, you bump that up to Mondays and Thursdays, twice a week, and see how you feel. Every Monday, Thursday for a month. Month 3, that's when you go to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Try it for a month and continue on from there. Month 4, if you feel fine, then try it 5 days a week. Month 5, try it 7 days a week. If at any time you start to feel like you're getting the side effects, you've got 2 options. You can push through, which I don't know how the doc feels about this, but in my experience, when patients start to experience the side effects and they push through, about 3 weeks later, those side effects subside and they're back to normal, and they can continue.
So you sure it's so bad? Are you sure?
Exactly. Exactly. The other option is cut back to the previous month's routine intake frequency and hold there for a month to see how that works out for you. it'll level out and you'll be fine, and you can maintain there for the rest of your intake duration.
I've never thought of it that way. It's
Yeah.
ease yourself into it. That's smart.
Right.
I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in 23
Well-
years, or it's probably 20 years ago I came up with this, maybe 19 years ago, I've not had a single patient come back and say, yeah, complete failure. There's no way I could take it. Never once. So that's what you can consider. I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. But Dr. Nusbaum might have an opinion on that, for or against. Let's listen to him. Not
No,
me.
that's exactly what I tell patients. I don't know that I necessarily start so low. But it's basically the same principle: is take it a couple days a week, see how you do, and work your way up. And even if you find that you can only take it a couple days a week, 2-3 days a week, it's better than not taking it at all.
It's better than nothing. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay. And doctor, when you're prescribing this medication, do you ever recommend the patients get their hormone panels checked at all? Are you signing?
I routinely do not check hormones, other than if a patient is very young. So in the younger patients, less than 25 years old, 24 years old, I do generally get baseline testosterone, free total testosterone, DHT, sex hormone binding globulin, things like that, just to screen them, because I do feel like if they're already starting low, that is a little bit of a concern for mine for potentially causing a side effect. And then, at that point, I oftentimes have referred the patient to an endocrinologist for an opinion on whether they feel like it's appropriate or okay to give the patient finasteride. In normal, a 30-year-old guy comes in, I'm not checking his blood work. That's not going to make a decision whether we could take it or not.
Yeah. If someone's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they have lower to low normal testosterone or DHT, is that still a deterrent, or is that only in the 20-year-old men?
I think you got to try it. I think I'm still more worried about the younger guys. Maybe they're, still developing in a certain stage, and that's a little bit more worrisome for me. They're not at the age of families yet, and it's usually their mothers all over me about, what are you doing to my son? Am I going to have grandkids and all these things? So it's just kind of, like I said, I don't think that based on your numbers, maybe you would be more susceptible to having side effects or not, but I would still tell you got to try it and see how you do.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And keep in mind, what's going on with the DHT inhibition, and that's what it is. It's inhibiting the formation of DHT. You gotta go back and look at how DHT is formed. And you got 5-alpha reductase type 2 enzyme interacting with testosterone and converting it into DHT. So what happens is finasteride gets in between that process and prevents that conversion. So you wind up actually having more free-flowing testosterone.
Increased testosterone. Right.
And that's why a lot of people talk about an androgenic effect in the gym, including yours truly. Like when I take maybe a hiatus for a few weeks and I get back on it, it's like, man, I'm pumping. It's noticeable, at least for me and a lot of other people. A lot of other people aside from that would be like, oh no, my left arm fell off or some strange side effect or whatever. But a lot of people don't think about that, and that's what's going on. And furthermore, another thing that people don't think about is the amount of testosterone, dihydrotestosterone in your system doesn't really play a factor in your hair loss. It's the sensitivity of the follicles themselves to the DHT.
Correct.
So, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I got too much DHT in my system." Are you bald? No. Okay. So, it doesn't. That's not the way it works. So
I say that's why there's some 80-year-old men. They all had testosterone and DHT in their body, and they have a full head of hair. So
exactly.
That's why everybody asks me, well, what should my test levels be at? Or the people that are using testosterone, I said, there's not a magic number. And I have a lot of people that are losing hair and they're on finasteride. They say, but my THT is super low. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. Your follicles are really sensitive. Even if your DHT is 1, if your follicles are sensitive to DHT, you're still going to have some effect.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, can your DHT can it be too low? Like I know, I think if I've researched this right, I believe dutasteride can like really lower it. And doctor, I think you said you're on it. So like, do you find
Yeah,
that
because the
having
dutasteride blocks more of the DHT production. So it blocks type 1 and type 2 5-alpha reductase, whereas finasteride only blocks type 2.
Right.
So, I mean, can your DHT be too low for life and functioning? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure my DHT is probably 0. I'm still losing hair a little bit, so I'm not sure about that one. But you know,
that's how sensitive your follicles are. 0 DHT and
yeah,
it's still
super
sensitive.
Thanks, Dad. You know,
exactly. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for answering these questions. This was so insightful and helpful. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Glad you called.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. You have a nice day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye. 1-888-491-0512. That was a great call and some really good questions. I like talking about that stuff because not many people are asking those kinds of questions and a lot of nuances that people don't really realize about DHT, testosterone, finasteride, things like that. So glad we're able to talk about that. Doc, how are we doing on time?
We're okay.
Yeah. Okay. There was another call that I had to turn away because I don't know how to put them on hold while we got another call. So, caller that just tried to call in, you're welcome to call back again. Lines are open. 1-888-491-0512. That is toll free in all of North America, including Mexico, where I just got back from. God, it was hot, but just so nice. And then, of course, in the UK, 044-20-812-67771. We got Dr. Aron Nusbaum from Miami Hair in Miami, Florida. See how that works? Live to answer your questions. We got a call from area code 567. Hey, you're on the main event with Dr. Aron Nusbaum. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Drew from Ohio.
What's up, Drew from Ohio? How are you?
Hey, Drew.
Good. I called on the Bald Truth before, Joe, so you guys helped me out a little bit.
On where?
Just had some questions.
Who?
On the Bald Truth.
The what? Just kidding. Go ahead.
So I just had some questions on this hair transplant journey. I've been to a few surgeons or over the phone and some in consultations live, but the issue that I'm having is I'm kind of going back and forth between whether or not I want to have a FUE or an FUT. And sometimes even depending on if I'm changing like what surgery I want, some doctors are saying, I really don't see, other than the recession, much of a problem. But I can see some, like, I would call it like a diffuse thinning a little bit in the center. And that bothers me more than the recession. And when I talk about switching between the two, I get some surgeons saying that they wouldn't mess with the thinning at all because there is still significant amount of hair in those areas. If that's the case, then I would probably just stay with the FUE because of the scar and like just try to restore the hairline. Does that sound like the more practical approach? Or because I'm getting some doctors saying like, oh, you could have 2,500 grafts, while others are just saying, no, let's just do anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 grafts.
Well, okay. So the first question, and I'll let Dr. Aron jump on this one. Are you what's your preventative routine right now?
How old are you? What are you doing?
38 right now.
Okay.
And I'm doing dutasteride at 1 milligram. And I'm up to, I think, 5 milligrams oral minoxidil.
Okay. So your dutesteride's generic, correct?
I've kind of switched back and forth when I'm covered under insurance.
So that's
Sometimes
a yes.
I can get Avidart.
That's a yes.
But right now I'm an Avidart. So
okay. All right. Okay. Well, okay. And were you diagnosed as having diffused hair loss, or is this just your own personal feeling on the matter?
I have seen to I've been to two different doctors to get it looked at, and both of them just kind of were like, well, it looks like, you're losing hair like an average man would lose their hair. Just get on this medication. I mean, that's pretty much, they didn't really say what the cause of it really was.
Okay.
And that was another thing that was bothering me, is I can't try to get it properly diagnosed. I haven't had like a scalp biopsy or anything like that.
Well, that's not necessary. But
No.
what about your donor?
Okay.
Did anyone say anything about your donor? Is it healthy? Is it also diffused or thin or negative in any way?
No, it seems to be okay. It seems fine. Everybody says I'd be a good patient.
Doc, you might know where I'm going with these
I
questions, but I'll let you take over.
I have two things to say. Number one, if you are trying to get an honest answer as to whether or not there is enough space between your existing hairs to transplant the diffuse thinning, I can guarantee you that none of these consultations that you're having via a computer screen is going to be able to answer that question for you. So in your particular case, you should be seeing people in person, and I would be very skeptical or careful other than basic general guidelines that people are giving you. There's no way, and this is a whole nother subject. I feel like, Joe, we could have 17 of these shows to talk about all this stuff. But
Right.
The virtual consultation is really, really challenging. And realize nobody's looking at your donor area. Nobody's looking at your recipient area. There is a threshold. If we don't have enough space to make a recipient site between your existing hair, we're basically going to damage your own hair to stick another one in, and you're wasting donor in an area that you don't need. That determination can only be made in person with a doctor who's wearing loupes and looking at it, or sticking a microscope on your scalp.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that Joe is alluding to, another reason to be careful with these virtual consultations in your case, is if you're having more of a generalized thinning in addition to the hairline, you need to make sure that you don't have dupa. Because a lot of men that have diffuse hair loss or thinning throughout the part in more of a feminine type of pattern, a lot of times their donors are not suitable for hair transplantation. Now, the fact that you tell me you do have some recession in the hairline, a lot of times people with dupa retain their hairline, and you just sort of see thinning behind it and above it. So the fact that you do have a little bit of male recession maybe leads me a little bit more towards hopefully you don't have dupa. But in your particular case, you need to be seen in person. Somebody needs to stick a microscope on your scalp, both in the donor and the recipient area.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing in medicine that we do is diagnosis. We can't treat anybody, whether it be with a medicine, whether it be with a surgery, without knowing what we're dealing with and explaining the process of it to the patient. There are so many types of hair loss that can mimic regular male pattern baldness, which are not amenable to hair transplantation. And I can tell you that there's no way for them to do that and tell you whether you have that unless they look at your scalp.
There you go.
So no more virtual consultations for you.
That's fair. Okay.
Well, or listen, when I
question.
get into this situation with patients, what I tell them is this, because I do a lot of these virtuals as well. A lot of my patients come from out of town. I tell them, look, I'm sure that I can do this for you. If you're okay with that, I'm sure we can do it. I don't know whether we can get this area or should do this. So if you want to know the full information before you jump into doing this, take a flight to Miami, come see me and I have many patients that after the virtual, I tell them, look, if you really want to know what you can and can't do, what you should or shouldn't be doing, and you really want to have a full elaborate plan, before, I'm glad you got to meet me virtually. You get a sense of who I am as a person in our practice. You got a general understanding of me. Come down here and see me before you make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any more questions?
The only thing I'm not understanding is, while on the medication, if you are experiencing like some shedding, and I know that that's normal, but to be expected, even if you're not losing hair, but is it if you're experiencing the hair loss from the type of hair loss that's being supported by the medications, if it's that type of hair loss, is shedding to be expected throughout your lifetime? Like, because you are kind of changing cycles and things like that with minoxidil.
Well,
So
you're always going to be
always to be
you're
expected.
you're always going to
gonna
be
shed.
having cycles of shedding. That's all mammals go through that. That's unavoidable. No matter what medication you're on, with minoxidil you're extending the anagen phase, but eventually those hairs will shed too, going into the telogen or catagen then telogen before they come back around into the anagen. So it's an ongoing cycle that's unbreakable. At different times, you'll have some more hairs shedding than others, and you might be going, "Oh my God, what's going? I'm losing more hair." Nothing wrong with that. I went through that myself recently, where it's like, I think I'm shedding a little more hairs than I should, but okay,
Right.
well, I'll chill, and sure enough, a few months later, it was fine.
It stops. Right.
Yeah, it stops, and eventually those hairs grow back in their anagen phase. So don't freak out by seeing some hairs in the shower or in the sink or on your shirt
Correct.
or wherever. That's normal. No matter what kind of medication you're taking, no matter how good you're responding, everyone has that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there also a place, Joe, where I can send you possibly some photos if you have the time?
Yeah.
Just kind of see what advice you'd give me on it.
Yeah. Just email to Spencer@spencercoburn.com.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Half kidding.
You can send them to. Do you follow me on Instagram? You better say yes.
I actually don't.
He does
have
now.
Instagram.
Aha.
I don't,
That's a good excuse. I don't.
Good answer.
It's the I don't have Instagram reply. Yeah. That's fine. What do you use?
just emails. Actually, I don't really do the social media.
Yeah, I hate
other than YouTube.
I hate email, but yeah, you can just send it to admin@hairtransplantmentor.com, and I'll have a look.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any more questions for Dr. Nusbaum?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling.
Have a good one.
And,
Thank you.
And have a good night in Ohio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye. All right. 1-888-491-0512. Doctor, how are we doing on time?
I'm fine.
Okay. All right. He's going the distance.
Whenever they stop talking to us, that's when
there
we'll
you
go.
go. Right on. So there was a call that was trying to come through 954 area code. I think that's San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
954?
Yeah, I think
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, that's Fort
Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I have family members that have that. It's close to the San Francisco area as far as the area code goes. Yeah, so lines are open, 1-888-491-0512. If you're watching in the UK, the number is 044-20-812-67771. We're live on the main event with Dr. Aron Nusbaum out of Miami, Florida. Fantastic hair transplant surgeon, and I've always loved your story. Like I talked about it when I did your intro video when we first started working together. But the idea that you're not much bigger than a toddler and you're playing with hairs under the microscopes because your dad's trying to keep you busy so he can do some work.
Yep.
I thought it's just such a great story, and
quite a daycare experience.
A daycare experience. Here, kid, look at some hair. It really is, and it's a testament to how kids grew up in the 80s and as opposed to the way that they're raised now. So I always like that story. It's a good one. Let's see what else. There's some other things I want to ask you about. We talked about the strip. We talked about the female hair transplants. We talked about your robot.
I'm doing a lot of no shave FUE. I know you're a little skeptical about that, but
okay.
I'm doing a lot of it.
I am, and I'm skeptical about no shave FUE or long hair FUE, and that's okay. So that's the problem. So long hair and no shave, those can be two separate things.
Not the same.
So when you say no shave, is that the not shaving of the donor area?
Correct. So
okay.
In general, I never force people to shave their recipient areas. I was trained doing strip surgery where we don't cut people's hair. So I don't care whether you cut the top or not. If you want to, great because it looks a little bit easier. If you don't, you may be here for an extra 30, 45 minutes in the chair. Not a big deal. We can work around it. We have expertise in that.
Right.
So all of our FUEs, we don't shave the recipient area unless the patient chooses to. What I refer to as no shave FUE is the FUE extraction without shaving of the donor area. I call it the have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
You don't want to get cut and you don't want to shave, which is the only people that I reserve it to. They say, Doc, I know you're the best. I know you create a great scar, but mentally I just can't get around that. And I'm an executive. I have a wife. I have a trip. I can't shave my head. She'll kill me. What am I going to do?
I don't want her to know I had a hair transplant and spend all this money. What do I do?
Exactly. That too. So we've been doing a lot more of it. And actually, it's worked very well. I used to counsel patients that it was really for patients that needed a minor sort of hairline procedure, 1,500 grafts, a smaller type of case, just because of the length of time that it takes for us to do it, because the extractions are more challenging to do and more time consuming. But interestingly enough, as we have gotten better and more efficient at it, we've knocked out in this last month, we've done about, 4 cases, close to, 22 to 2,500 grafts with it, all in a single normal 10 to 12 hour hair transplant day. And, the proportions of grafts have been high numbers of 3 multi-hair grafts and, excellent growth and results. So it's not my preferred thing. I don't even bring it up actually to the patients when they come in for consultation. I talk about strip and FUE, traditional shave.
Yeah.
And then when I sense the hesitation of, well, neither of these are really good options for me, I say, well, there is this other option that we can consider, etc. So I'm not overly marketing it by any means, because I don't prefer to do it. I'd rather have full visualization of the donor area and everything. But for that particular patient, or in particular, and I think we've talked about this before, unique subset of patients who have undergone strip surgery, who now have no more scalp elasticity, really the biggest trauma for them is the shave.
Yeah.
So this is a great option for post-strip FUE concealment.
There you go. That's good. So their donor scar isn't revealed during the recovery
Because
process.
if you have a scar, it's going to take a month or 6 weeks for that thing to be covered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are good exceptions, and I've always acknowledged the exceptions, but in general, if it's someone that dabbles in it just to please a patient, it's like, okay, then how much experience do you have at this?
Correct.
So you have to do.
And we started slow and worked our way up. We used to tell people, oh, you need 2,500 grafts. You can't do this. You're not a candidate.
You mean you're not a pioneer? You mean you didn't start doing this?
I'm not the first.
The first? What?
No.
Isn't it refreshing, people, to hear a doctor say that he's not the pioneer of something for a change, that's like, I'm so tired of that. Like, so many doctors are pioneers at something that's been around for 20 years before they even started doing the surgery themselves. So kudos to you for being honest about that. Well, how many are you doing anyway? You said you're doing a lot more now. How many are you doing?
Of the no shaves, I'm probably doing, we do about 10, 12 surgeries a week in the practice. I'm probably doing easy one a week, maybe 2.
Okay. That's fair enough then. That's good. That's good.
Right. Small subset, but
Again, 1-888-491-0512, toll free in North America if you want to call in to ask questions of Dr. Aron Nusbaum. This is your chance. He won't be back on for a while. Maybe he'll be back sooner than later. I don't know. See how the schedules work out.
I'm invited.
Yeah, well, always invited. You're always invited to call in, even if you're not on the show specifically. And that's a great thing. This format doesn't exist anywhere else except for the Friday broadcast with Spencer. And it was nice to hear the previous caller, or was it previous caller or the one before him, talking about the benefit of being able to speak to you, Dr. Nusbaum, directly and have your questions answered in this open format like this. So, I enjoy doing this. I'm glad to be, bringing this back so I can talk to doctors I work with directly and bring them to the public for these questions. And then, of course, every Friday on The Bald Truth. And I'm going to be doing more of this because I think it's needed. I'd love to do more of the bald truth with Spencer, but he's got other things he's doing. So I'm going to try to do this more often. We'll see. I tried in the past, didn't work out because I got a life too, but we'll see how it works out. And I'm going to give one more shout out for the number. And if no one wants to call in, that's fine. We're going to head out. We got stuff to do. The number is 1-888-491-0512. That's toll free in North America. You can give us a call, talk to Dr. Aron Nusbaum of Miami Hair. If you're in the UK, 044-20-812-67771. I think that's toll free. No, it's not toll free for you. It's a normal call, but I don't know how it's charged in the UK. Anything else coming up? Any conferences you're going to? Are you speaking anywhere? Are you presenting anywhere? What's in your future?
Not really any meetings. I'm not sure I'm going to go to the ISHRS in Berlin this year. I have some family stuff going on, so I'm not going to make it there. I did go to the meeting last year. There's some dermatology meetings that I am speaking at, so that's always exciting to try to, I'm a little bit biased as a dermatologist, trying to get more dermatologists into hair transplants, just because we are trained in hair and scalp disorders, unlike a lot of other specialties. So I think it is appropriate for a dermatologist, not saying it's not appropriate for other types of doctors, but hair transplantation, I think, should be learned by dermatologists. So I am speaking at some conferences and meetings coming up, trying to, spread sort of spread
the word,
the new techniques and spread the words about this great field that we're in, and try to get the right type of people involved in.
Well, it's a natural fit, of course, for sure.
Correct.
Okay, so no calls coming through, so I guess that's going to be it. And it's been a great show. It's been basically 2 hours. We started on time at 3:01, something like that. So we've basically filled out the 2 hours, which is what I'm used to as far as the format goes. And I'm glad you're able to stick around for the full show. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll let you go, and thank you for coming on to the main event. And
thank you for having me. I hope to see everybody soon. And it was such a pleasure to be here and get to speak with all you guys again.
Absolutely. And Doc, I'm going to switch you over and pod you down while I do the outro, and we'll talk in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to switch over here. Let's see, wait, where am I? You guys got to give me some time to get used to this stuff again. I'm doing everything on my own again, which is always tough. But anyway, thank you to Dr. Aron Nusbaum and to all of the callers that called in and asked your great questions. It's great content that people are watching this in the replay will also enjoy, because your questions are their questions. And so glad you guys got your answers. So if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Of course, support what I'm doing here for free. Don't charge anything for this. There's no Patreon. There's none of that bullshit. I don't do that. I'm here to do this at no cost, because I think that it needs to be out there. And great doctors like Dr. Nusbaum coming on and sharing their knowledge as well. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Joe Tillman Official, and of course, Dr. Nusbaum at Dr. Nusbaum on Instagram, and at Hair Doctors. Is it The Hair Doctors or Hair Doctors?
The Hair Doctors.
The Hair Doctors on Instagram, and follow him. And I guarantee you're going to watch those results fly by on his Insta, and you're going to be like, holy shit, Joe was right. This is some natural looking work. You will be impressed. I promise you. With that said, I'm going to say goodbye, and thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.